Hi, I'm Nobuntu Webster. I'm an entrepreneur. I moved to Sandton to pursue a dream. I've based myself in Sandton because it's the gateway to Africa. The neighborhood of Sandton is alive. It's alive with possibility. It's got the most amazing vibe. If you need to get anything done, this is the place to get it done. One of the things I really love about Sandton is how it lights up at night. If those lights don't inspire you, nothing will. Sandton is the richest square mile in Africa. It has everything, from shopping in Sandton City to five-star hotels like a Michelangelo for my international guests. It works for me to be here. There are so many designer stores. There's an abundance of clothes and everything else to choose from. Being an entrepreneur, I travel a lot, so it's really convenient to be able to get onto the Gau train, and in 15 minutes, I'm at the airport. Business is important to me, but my family is everything, and that's why my family and I are looking to move into one of the suburbs in Sandton. Sandton has some of the most exclusive homes in the country, in places like Hyde Park and Sandown. A little bit less fast-paced is your suburbs like Bryanston and Rivonia. Bryanston was a natural choice. It's got great open spaces, it's safe. My son's already at a really good school there. Sandton gives me great variety, from an awesome nightlife to beautiful places for lunch to spas where I can really relax and recharge. Things happen in Sandton, and that's my neighborhood.
Good evening and welcome to episode 47 of the Private Property Podcast. I'm your host, Zamantungwa Kumalo. It's the day after Youth Day. I know many of us probably took yesterday to just rest, calm down, and maybe not respond to the many emails that we are always inundated with as we are working from home. We're, of course, back right here on the Private Property Podcast. And before we get started with this evening's show, we actually want to address Monday's show. We know many of you were watching excitedly on Monday as we were giving away that 100,000 Rand prize. But unfortunately, it didn't quite go as many of us, and even ourselves included, expected. And as you saw, certainly on our Facebook page, we heard a lot of your outcries, and we have made sure to remedy this one. And I'm sure that there are probably some people who have not read certainly our apology on Facebook. I want to actually read it out and even give the solution that we've come up with in order to make sure that everybody is happy, and not just us, but also you as our loyal viewers at home. And on Facebook, this was on yesterday, we wrote, "Dear Private Property Family, we messed up." Even though it's Youth Day, because we posted this yesterday, and we had some exciting things lined up, we can't continue with our day knowing that we have hurt members of our community and the brands we represent in the way that we handled the 100,000 Rand cash prize draw hosted on our live podcast on Monday. Now, having read every comment and every single emoji, we have heard your outcry and know that we owe you an explanation and, most importantly, an apology. Leading up to the draw, we were super excited to share the announcement with you and the lucky draw and the lucky draw winner whose life was about to change. And in our excitement, we incorrectly communicated that the winner selected would need to, 1, answer the phone, and 2, reply with the phrase "that pays." But we were wrong, and we were advised by our auditors just before the draw took place that we were obligated to follow the original T's and C's, which we did not stipulate the new rules. While we had the best intentions of making the draw a fun and exciting experience for everyone, this decision was made in fairness of everyone who entered according to the original T's and C's. The last minute change caused quite a lot of confusion, as many of you saw on Monday. And for that, we would like to say that we are quite sorry. In these circumstances, we understand that sorry alone simply is not enough. As part of taking responsibility for our actions, we need to make amends. And we've decided that the prize of 100,000 Rand will be equally split between the two people whose names we called out during the show. And in addition, we will be giving away 5,000 Rands over the next 10 podcast episodes, starting today with this episode. And everyone who entered the initial competition automatically qualifies for these daily draws. Now, in your feedback, and we plead certainly for constructive criticism, we're also learning as we go along with this particular podcast, and we do appreciate all the words that you have sent to us. Again, we do apologize. And as we've said, we'll be announcing the winner of the 5,000 Rand prize every single day for the next 10 episodes. And you can look forward to that later on the show. So later on, we'll be announcing the first winner of the 5,000 Rand prize. And it's going to be exciting. I mean, you guys already know how excited I get giving away money. I often wish that I was the one receiving the money. Unfortunately, I cannot enter the competition. But we'll get to that fun part later on the show. But for this evening's show, we are profiling young people in property. You all know how excited I am to talk about property, but I even get more excited when I talk to my peers, people who are in my age group, young people who are very passionate about property and doing certain things in property, whatever their innovation in the property space is, I always get excited. And this evening, I'm joined by Palesa Moloi, who's the founder and CEO of ParkUp, as well as Brian Sango, who is the sales manager of the Africa region for Property Inspect. Palesa and Brian, good evening. Thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Hi, Zama. Thank you so much for having us on the show. I'm really excited to be here to talk about our journey as a startup and also contribute to your podcast.
And I think let's start actually with you, Palesa. I mean, certainly, when we talk about PropTech, it's something that's relatively new in South Africa, or it's not as mainstream as the traditional ways of conducting property. What exactly is ParkUp and how did it come about?
So ParkUp is a parking application where we're basically giving the opportunity for property owners who have empty parking spaces to list their parking on our platform if it's empty. And then drivers will go onto the platform to book the parking on a monthly, daily, and even on an event basis. So that's what ParkUp is. And how it came about is that I was actually auditing City of Johannesburg while I was still doing my articles to become a chartered accountant. As a trainee, we didn't have parking spaces allocated to us. So I had to park on the side of the road. And I mean, I drive a VW. I was always scared about like my car getting stolen and all of that stuff. So I had to go find an alternative place, I guess, a solution for myself where I could park my car there during the day. So I found, a parking lot just down the road, had a side agreement with one of the guards actually to say, can I park here during the day? I'm really, really scared that my car's going to get stolen because it's in Brum. And that's how it started. I must say also the initial business model that we had was quite different to the one that we have at the moment. We realized that there were a lot of barriers to entry into that market. So what we were trying to do is to improve the parking experience for shopping centers. And then we realized that it wasn't going to be as easy for us to get into that, and hence the pivot into a marketplace for parking. And yeah, that's the ParkUp story in a nutshell.
And it's actually so interesting because a lot of people, depending on where you're going to be parking, certainly when you look at the CBD in Joburg, even when you look at Cape Town, finding parking in those two markets is a nightmare. I mean, I certainly know a lot of people in Cape Town always complain about the difficulty of finding parking. So certainly an app or an innovation like ParkUp does sort of address that particular need, because you don't want to have to spend a significant time looking for parking or parking your place and then wondering if there's something wrong and then you're a bit distracted from work. We'll talk a little bit more about, how you've gone about, pivoting, because as you said, you've had to pivot, especially when you look at now the effects certainly of COVID and the reality that there simply aren't that many people who are looking for parking right now because we're all at home. And we're hoping people, of course, are at home and they're staying safe. And there has to be a way to continue conducting business even though we're in the middle of a global pandemic. So finding the different innovative ways to do so. Brian, I want to bring you in. So you're working for, Property Inspect. We've certainly covered right here on the Private Property Podcast the importance of inspections. And I think if anything, we should probably have an episode just that's solely dedicated to inspections, why they're important, how they are conducted, and sort of the nuts and bolts of inspections. Just in a nutshell, how did you get involved in property, and then obviously in Property Inspect?
Okay. Hey Zama, thank you so much for having me. It's really an honor and a pleasure. I've been in property for about 10 years now, just over 10 years. Getting into property was never the goal, to be honest. I actually thought I would end up in medicine. So very humble beginnings, working in a restaurant in Cape Town. And just one of my clients is the one who handpicked me from the restaurant where I worked and said, look, they wanted me to sell property because I'd been selling breakfast so well. So that's how I got the opportunity in 2010. They helped me with my studies towards property, and I joined them as a personal assistant. And I've been selling properties as well since 2013. And just because one is young and, there were many barriers into the industry, I always really was looking for ways of giving myself a bit of an edge when it comes to competition in the industry. And I think that's really what kept me, always on the lookout for new ways of doing things, new approaches, technology and its impact on the industry as a whole. So in 2016, a partner and I were thinking of actually automating the property inspection process itself. We'd obviously, with the experience that we had in the industry and all that we'd seen, everything was still very manual, very tedious, very time consuming and so forth. And a number of applications were already changing, a number of other industries. And we thought, imagine an application where we could do all that we need to do that an inspection comprises of on our mobile phone. So because there also are some monetary inputs that are required, instead of starting our own thing from scratch, through the right sort of networking with the right people, we went into a joint venture with an inspection software company in the UK, and we got the license to cover the African region and just grow the product in Africa. Yeah.
And I think, oftentimes, and I even said this certainly early on in the show, that PropTech isn't as mainstream in South Africa. It's certainly making lots of inroads. We certainly had even the CEO of Flow, and they're also obviously in the PropTech space. We're certainly seeing a number of different players in PropTech rising and providing different solutions for some of the we'll say challenges that we sometimes face within the property space. And as you're saying, and I think some of the things are very admin intensive, and there's certainly different ways to automate it and have them be, whether it's an app or whatever the innovation is. But we're still getting it. I think when we certainly compare ourselves to whether it's our American or perhaps British counterparts, we still have a relatively long way to go. But I think one of the great advantages with not being the first in certain things is you're able to just essentially duplicate what other people have done, and whatever issues they had, they've now solved for them. And you're taking an already sort of done project or even app, and then seeing how you can apply it to the local context. Now, Palesa, you were sharing earlier that you've had to find different ways to certainly pivot, especially seeing as we are now in the era of COVID. We're obviously still trying to rethink what a post-COVID world looks like, although I doubt we'll ever really freely be COVID-free. But we're certainly trying to think through what does the world look like when we go back to certainly what we used to know. What have been some of those ways that you've had to essentially pivot and look at different ways that you can fill the gaps within the property space?
Yeah, that's such a great question. And where I would like to start that is the first pivot that we made, right? So we got into the MTN solution space in Cape Town. We were super excited about our product. When you're building something as novel as this, especially in the South African context, you get very excited to build an app, just to put something out there. But much to our demise, actually, when we got to the demo day, one of the investors in the session told us that he doesn't actually see ParkUpp going anywhere because our business model has got a lot of flaws in it. So this was the original business model. So we had to really think, what is this? What is this guy actually talking about? And it made a lot of sense. So the one day we were walking in the streets of Arbs in Cape Town Observatory, and we realized that there were a lot of empty parking spaces in people's parking garages or people's shopping centers, office spaces, and that sort of thing. But at the same time, we had these cars that were actually parked on the side of the road. So we did more research and we found out that it was actually very historical, where, people weren't actually using cars back then. They were mostly using public transport and that sort of thing. So a lot of the parking spaces were built post the era where people were now starting to use their cars. But then at the same time, these parkades were actually privatized. So yeah, I guess, that's the first story, is that we had to pivot then, where we said, okay, cool, we've got this mismatch between the demand and supply of parking. Why don't we create a platform where we can actually just match the two? Coming back into COVID, so we launched last year in May 2019. In May, we had really great traction. We've got about 5,500 listings on our platform already, working with the likes of Redefine, Investec Property Fund, Izandla. There was a lot going on for us in 2019, and we really thought 2020 is going to be our year. We're going to be growing the business, scaling. So we get to 2020, COVID happens. Just before COVID happened, or the lockdown for our country happened, I was actually in the States, in Silicon Valley, where we were trying to raise funding. So there was a lot of, I guess, promising deals for us, and I got back into the country. Now I'm hearing about lockdown and all of that stuff. I'm like, what? It was very scary for us because we were like, okay, this means a lot of things for our business. One, we can't raise funding. Second of all, the way in which people are going to be using our platform is also going to change. So what we've been doing during lockdown, I think from about April to up until now, we started applying the design thinking methodology of actually conducting interviews with people that are on our platform and people that are not on our platform. And what that meant is that we're just trying to understand, how are these parking, I guess, behavioral patterns going to change? And we realized that at the moment, people don't actually know what's going to happen post-COVID, right? So we need to kind of move with the change. So the current, I'd call it a slight pivot and a small pivot in that it's not an entirely different business model that we're going to be going into, but it's using the existing parking spaces that we have on our platform to turn them into a drive-in cinema. So there's, empty parking spaces, especially in terms of rooftops and that sort of thing. So we just thought, okay, cool. Now that people are kind of locked into their houses, they're not really going out there. They're yearning for that, human experience outside of their homes. Why don't we create something for them where they can actually do that in a safe, social distancing type of environment? And that's why the drive-in cinema is something that works for us. And it also, I guess it's a platform for us to keep going while we find a long-term kind of pivot for the business. And also while we watch what the market is doing, while we watch what, how people are actually changing their parking patterns. So that's the slight pivot that we've come up with. And we're continuously doing the design thinking methodologies to find out how are people going to be changing post, or maybe in the new world that we're speaking of. Yeah.
We're going to go for a quick break, and when we come back, I'll still be in conversation with Palesa Moloi, who's the founder and CEO of ParkUp, as well as Brian Sango, who is a sales manager for the Africa region for Property Inspect. And of course, you'll be looking forward to also that 5,000 Rand giveaway that we'll be doing at the end of the show. I'm quite excited about it, and I will go through some of the rules with that particular giveaway, but it's going to be exciting. I mean, at the end of the show, certainly for the next 10 shows, somebody's going to be walking away with 5,000 Rand. It's unfortunately not me, but I'm sure many of you at home are waiting with bated breath to see if you are one of the winners. We're going to go for a quick break, and we'll be back just after this.
Welcome to your next home. This is the perfect room if you're looking to expand the family. It's perfect. There's a kids' room or a playroom.
Did you say playroom?
Yeah, playroom.
It's not been very bad.
You know what, let me give you a moment. I'm gonna feed the pancake.
Yeah, you go feed
Okay.
the whatever.
Welcome back to episode 47 of the Private Property Podcast. I'm your host, Zamantungwa Kumalo. This evening, I'm speaking to Palesa Moloi, who's the founder of ParkUpp, as well as Brian Sango, the sales manager for the Africa region for Property Inspect. Now, Brian, we've just heard from Palesa the different ways that ParkUpp is certainly tried to pivot and innovate in the era of COVID, because we know that so many businesses are certainly affected by, the impact of COVID. A lot of us didn't see this one coming, and we certainly didn't see the extent to which we're going to be affected by this pandemic. In which ways have you had to, find different ways to still conduct business? I mean, I know there are certainly instances, for example, at level 5, and I think even a bit or certainly the new regulations for level 4, the initial regulations rather for level 4, we couldn't do property inspections. There was a lot of talk around how can those inspections be done, especially the moment people started moving in and out of apartments. Initially, of course, we couldn't do so, but certainly as the restrictions started loosening up a bit, people could move. And we went from just moving to returning to your initial place of residence to being able to get into a new lease agreement altogether. And that's, of course, part of when, property inspection certainly becomes so important. So as the economy slowly begins to open, how did, Property Inspect certainly have to find different ways to either pivot or innovate in the era of COVID? And how are you guys seeing, a post-COVID world, or certainly functioning as we're still facing COVID, especially given that, some people might think, if there's one thing I'll maybe, skip, it's a property inspection. Although, of course, to viewers at home, we always say don't skip your inspection. But people are now going to be trying to find different ways to cut this and chop that, even when it comes to their property portfolio and managing their property portfolio.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think it's highly important, like Palesa touched on, to remain very adaptable to change. We are living in uncertain times. 2020 is nothing like we planned. When I said 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 coming into this year, I had a different idea, different goal, different projections for what I had for myself personally and as a company. And here we are, such is life. I think it's just a matter of us remaining positive and trying to do what we can, reevaluating ourselves and our goals and everything. For example, for us at Property Inspect, on an operational level, nothing much pretty much changed, because we've always been very futuristic in terms of how we work, just working from different places, working from home where necessary, allowing transportation between different cities. Hence, I've been in Joburg more times than I've been in Cape Town in the past 6 months before we got into the lockdown, purely because I was getting bored a bit easily in one place. So the operational model hasn't changed much. Our whole team is working from home in various locations, and we obviously just use technological platforms to meet and everything. The same offering is what we've been using for our clients as well. So Zoom meetings and Microsoft Teams, you name it, are platforms we've just been using to take that virtual experience and still use it for face-to-face interaction, right? And then what we also did was, aside from saying, okay, guys, let's keep operating even though we're at home, we thought of our clients as well to say, let's put ourselves in our clients' shoes. Let's know exactly what it is that they're going through, what challenges are they facing now. They obviously need to carry out their day-to-day tasks and jobs and everything. How can we best enable them to do that even during times like these? And also, like Palesa touched on, that it's always important to stay ahead of knowing exactly what your clients need, what their teething issues are, so as to go back to your own business model, your own business offering, and see how you can cater for some of those concerns or needs and so forth. So one thing about Property Inspect. Now, Property Inspect is a software, an inspection software platform that enables any person that needs to carry out any property inspection of any kind, be it a valuation inspection, a move-in, move-out inspection for people in the rental space or commercial space or whatsoever. All of that, instead of it being done on a clipboard and file, pen and paper like it used to, is now done on their cell phone device or tablet, enabling them to do everything digitally. So it's paperless and automated email distribution, you name it. Now, one thing we realized was when we got into lockdown, the first thing that came to mind was, wait, most of our clients are not going to be able to gain access into these properties. So having the app on their phone is not really going to quite help them. And immediately we jumped in and launched a self-service inspection platform, which now was a further offering enabling the actual occupant of the space that needs to be inspected to be able to complete a digital checklist. And in real time, all that data, photo, video evidence is available for our clients that are still working from home and cannot be physically present in the property. So like you probably have heard of virtual tours that are a big thing, and a whole lot of other offerings. I think it's just a way of saying, you know what, change is good and let's continue evolving. Still stick to whatever it is that you need to be doing and just identify better ways of doing it. But we certainly can still keep the wheel turning, and yeah, positive mindset just keeps everything moving. That's how we've just kept on going on. And it's actually we've been more busier now than we have before, both on a national level as well as global client acquisitions as well. It's just been busy 7 days a week.
And I think that's actually something that certainly a number of people in the property space are seeing, that there's quite a lot of activity where property is concerned. There are a lot of people who are also looking to either venture into property, perhaps add property as an asset class in their investment portfolio, and want to, of course, gain more knowledge around property. And certainly, the viewers of the Private Property Podcast, they go to www.privateproperty.co.za to learn as much as possible around property, already doing things like comparing different areas, seeing whether they qualify or don't qualify. So really trying to get as much knowledge as possible before they put their feet in. Some are already in and are looking at different ways to automate whatever they're already doing, enhance their property portfolio so that they're able to add perhaps the second or the third or the fourth investment property in their portfolio. Before I let both of you go, Palesa, any tips for certainly somebody who's looking to get into the property space, particularly the PropTech space? Because I think that's probably where there's still so much room for innovation, and even certainly for us as young people. I mean, a lot of us, we travel a bit. We've been to the Londons, New Yorks, Australias of this world, and we get a sense of how different markets are operating, certainly even within the property space. And we want to come back home and maybe try, some of the solutions that we've seen being implemented in other parts of the world. You even mentioned that prior to lockdown, you had just come from Silicon Valley to raise capital. And so certainly have a bit of experience in the PropTech space and the different players that are potentially there. Any tips you would give to somebody who's looking to venture down that road?
So the one thing that I'll say about PropTech is that it's not just about technology. I think people sometimes make a mistake that, it's just about taking technology and then plugging into property. PropTech goes as far as business model innovation. So if you have a new business model that you would like to, marry with property, that is also still PropTech. The one thing that I'll say about going into the PropTech space, or even property in general, having a good network is really important. And if you don't have one, make sure that you invest in that, because for ParkUp, I don't think we would have actually made it this far if we didn't have the right people, whether on our advisory board or even in our network. And then also resilience. So we started ParkUp in 2016. The business model was full of flaws and all of that stuff. But what I realized in business is that initially all our ideas are probably wrong. And I say that with, a lot of confidence, because I've seen it in my own business and also other people's businesses as well. So stay long enough in the game to actually chip away at whatever it is that you're wrong about. It is a very tough game. It's not easy at all, but I think with resilience and also just having a passion for what you do, that I actually wanted to share a story with you earlier that, ParkUp has become such a unique, strong brand in the sense that we have a client actually in Cape Town, and he's become like our sales agent, if you call it that, because he loves ParkUp so much. I mean, he's worked in a particular area for about 30 years, and he hadn't had parking. He had to park on the side of the road. But because he loved our passion, he really enjoyed our customer experience. He tells literally everyone that comes, within his radius about ParkUp. And for me, that's so important, to be able to build relationships like that through your passion and just telling your story as raw as it is. So those are my words of encouragement and also advice.
I actually love that. I mean, and even the point of being resilient. I think certainly a lot of people in our age group, we sometimes don't stay long enough to learn some of the lessons. We want returns relatively quickly, and don't sometimes take a long-term view. And the reality with certainly for property is you need to take a long-term view on it. Very few people make money quickly in the beginning, and so you need to be kind of long-term when you're looking at property. Brian, you go from selling breakfast to selling houses. What would be your tips to young people who want to get into property?
I know, right? I think my first,
That's such a full circle. I mean, when you said it, I was just like, that is the most full circle thing I could ever that anybody could ever actually experience. I mean, literally, how do you go from selling breakfast one day and the next thing you're selling, property?
Selling houses you only dreamed of seeing, or houses you saw on TV. The first message I'd like to put out there is that, dreams do come true. It takes a lot of hard work, a lot of determination, a lot of resilience, like Palesa has mentioned. The right network is highly important. You need to have the right voices coming towards you, because that brings out the best in you and keeps you just going all out for what it is that you want. And then just more about the property space and the PropTech space as well. I would say it's an industry with endless opportunities. However, endless opportunities as they may be, you certainly need to personally identify your why. Why are you doing what you're doing? Before you just see a gap and say, I want to jump for it, identify your why, because once you know your why strongly enough, it goes back again, it ties in with what Palesa mentioned, is that now your passion just bursts naturally because you know exactly what drove you to do that. And once you also know your why, then definitely when the days are dark, when the dark days come, you still will keep going. You know, like I mentioned, selling breakfast to getting to this point, if I were to tell you how many times throughout my journey that family, friends, and everyone just gave me reason to give up. But because I knew my why, I just hung on. And I think aside from that as well, another thing I'd like to add is originality is highly important. There were many, many times in this journey where I think I was trying too hard to speak a certain way, dress a certain way, and project myself a certain way, which might have seemed beneficial. But the moment I just truly got to a point where I identified with my being as who I am, everything just became fun for me. It became very relaxed. And I just saw more growth coming out of that. So it's the why, it's passion, it's resilience, it's knowing for a fact that dreams do come true regardless of what other people may tell you. And it's not letting bad situations just drain the life out of you. You know, stay positive, try focus on what you can do within that situation. And I think one last thing I want to end off with, which also goes in with the right network, as mentioned earlier by Palesa, is that you need to strongly take advantage of having the right type of strategic partnerships. So don't try master everything. Don't try be someone who perfects everything, you know. Bring in another separate entity that's good at something else and map out a strategy where you guys can coexist and work together. In the tech space, they speak of integrations, certain softwares that can integrate with other softwares, just create a nice little ecosystem that benefits all the players, but mostly benefits your clients. Because at the end of the day, it's not about us thinking of our businesses as brands alone. We need to think of who actually is making use of our business or benefiting from our business, and look at it to say, okay, well, if we give them this integrated solution, or if we give them this power team, or if we give them this strategic partnership, we're likely to make their lives better at the end of the day. So yeah.
Thank you so much.
Love
I absolutely love it. And I think it really does speak certainly to how as young people we, and more than anything, actually like the knowing what your why is and having a strong why, because there are many gaps in different markets. So I think beyond property, there are always going to be gaps in different markets, and there are always going to be different opportunities one can take advantage of. But understanding why you want to do a particular thing at the core is so important, because the difficult times are certainly going to come, whether it's COVID or something else. And when you have a very strong why, you're not going to try and necessarily jump onto the next thing, but as certainly both of you have done, but particularly you, Palesa, you're going to try and pivot because you're very clear about why you went into that particular venture. Palesa, Brian, we're going to leave it there this evening. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having us.
And that was Palesa Moloi, who's the founder of ParkUp, and Brian Sango, the sales manager for the Africa region for Property Inspect. We're going to go for a short break. And when we come back, we're going to be giving away that first 5,000 Rand prize. Of course, I did mention earlier on in the show that we're going to be giving away 5,000 Rand for the next 10 episodes right here on the Private Property Podcast. You don't want to miss this one. We'll be back just after this. 47 of the Private Property Podcast is, of course, the first 5,000 Rand giveaway for, as I've said, we're going to be giving away 5,000 Rands for the next 10 episodes right here on the Private Property Podcast. Now, so what's going to be happening, and I think we must just be clear on the T's and C's and the rules, so we don't make another mistake, because we certainly don't want to do that. So for the next 10 episodes, we'll be giving away 5,000 Rands at the end of the podcast. Now, these are the rules for the live podcast lucky draw. There are only 3 rules, very simple. So the first one is that the competition is only open to the people who already entered the 100,000 Rand competition. This also includes the estate agents, as they are not employees of private property. The second rule is that each episode will randomly select one winner, and I'll announce the winner right here live on air, just as we're about to do right now. And the third rule, the private property team will call the winner after the show to verify their details. Unfortunately, if they are not able to reach the winner within 24 hours, then the winner will be disqualified and the prize will be rolled over to the next episode. So there's a minor possibility we might do this for more than 10 episodes. So if we're unable to reach the person that wins the lucky draw, then we'll have to, roll it over to the following day or to another day. So without any more delay, let's get started. And we're going to pick the one lucky winner for this evening's show. One thing that I want to emphasize, it's quite exciting, as you all know, I always get excited to give away money, is that the moment we press start, the winner is only going to be the person where it literally says winner and their name. So we're doing this draw live on air, it's streaming, different names will keep popping up, and in the event where it accidentally pauses, whether it's because of internet speed or whatever the case is, that's not the winner. We literally have to see the words winner and the person's name, and that is going to be the final winner. Because I know that these glitches do tend to happen. Maybe my Fiverr might be a bit slow or whatever the case is, but we'll certainly be seeing who the lucky winner is shortly. And there we go. Let's see who's going to be the lucky winner. I know, I feel as though this is one of those moments where we're all waiting with bated breath. And of course, now all those different winners. Remember, it was over 40,000 people who entered. And the winner is Kathleen. I hope I'm pronouncing your surname properly. Kathleen Seens. I know I'm not pronouncing it properly. You are the first lucky winner of that 5,000 Rand prize. We will be contacting you within the next 24 hours. So please do keep your phone on. We want to verify your details and make sure that you get your 5,000 Rand prize. So that's the first winner of the 5,000 Rand prize. So every single day, now for the next 9 episodes, we'll be doing exactly this and announcing the winner of that 5,000 Rand prize. Well, folks, that's it. And so, folks, that's it. And I think I'm certainly excited for tomorrow's show. We'll be talking to another trailblazer who's doing absolutely phenomenally in the property space. You don't want to miss it. I'm not going to announce who. Watch out on our social media platforms to see who exactly we'll be talking to tomorrow. She's done phenomenally well. I certainly want to learn a thing or two from her and make sure that, from tomorrow's episodes, I know that I'll be able to probably scale up my own portfolio as much as possible. That's it on today's show. And of course, today's episode 47 of the Private Property Podcast. I've been your host, Zamantungwa. I know the president will be addressing us shortly, so we are looking forward to, as we, affectionately call it, the family meeting with the president. Until tomorrow evening, I hope you stay home and stay safe.
Hi, I'm Jared Siegel. I'm a local restaurateur and the owner of Jared's Espresso Bar and Eatery in Sea Point. I'm a Cape Town local, Camps Bay born and bred, and I've been living in Sydney, Australia for the last few years. Living abroad, I've always been drawn to the mother city, and I've recently decided to come back home. Taking lifestyle factors into consideration, Bantry Bay has been the perfect fit for me. Living on the Atlantic seaboard really resonates with what I'm all about. From the active lifestyle, the amazing food culture, its family-friendly environment, and amazing natural beauty, the quality of life we have on offer is really unique. The Atlantic seaboard has some of the most beautiful suburbs in the country. With areas like Camps Bay and its world-renowned beach culture and the recent refurbishment of Sea Point Promenade, it's no wonder our neighborhood has such a global appeal. After a long day of hard work, there's nothing better than taking a walk along Clifton Beach, sharing a moment and watching the sunset. Trying to offer something authentic to the community, I'm not about reinventing the wheel, just doing the classics really well. And this is my neighborhood.
Welcome to your next home. This is a brilliant home for an independent single lady such as yourself. Oh, Mrs. That's nice. And where's Mr.?
He'll be joining us later.
Okay. Let me show you around. This place is sporting all the best custom finishes, and the tiles are imported. Magnifique. Let me show you some more. This is the perfect room if you're looking to expand the family, if you know what I mean. I mean, it's perfect as a kid's room or a playroom.
Did you say playroom?
Yeah, playroom.
I've been very bad.
Mr. Palesa, so glad you could join us.
Oh, sorry, I was a little tied up.
Oh, I see. Do you guys have room for one more?